life, Kensington has had a bad rap. It's always had a bad reputation, and that stems all the way back to the founding of the city itself. And, you know, looking how the city was founded, what immigrant populations migrated where. Kensington was a large Irish population back in that time, and they were looked upon as shanty Irish, that it was nothing more than a mill neighborhood section of the city. And in fact, they were just looked upon as a bunch of rowdy drunkards who labored in the mills. And so that bad reputation has kind of preceded all these years. Now, there's no question that Kensington over the years has developed some problems and some decay. The number one problem is the lack of employment. It was an industrial-based neighborhood. It was centered around, mostly around textiles, but there was just a burgeoning industrial base here.
My name is Renee Massey, and I have lived in this area, 2739 Helen Street, for the last 25 to 30 years, and before that I lived just around the corner. So I grew up here, I went to the schools here, and my grandparents lived here, and their family has lived here. They came from Germany and moved into the area of what we call the village. And it was called the village because it was surrounded by factories and other places where people were working, and those houses in that area, from like the Somerset area to Lehigh, and then from Kensington to Frankfurt, they were all the houses that were built for the people who did work in the mills.
Growing up around here, the big thing on the weekend was you went to the Avenue, K&A. Everyone just calls it K&A, outsiders in Kensington and Allegheny. But that entire avenue, from Allegheny Avenue, even going as far as Somerset Street, was nothing but shops. You had your Woolworths and Murphy's and your record stores. I mean, that was a big thing growing up. That's what you did on a Saturday or Sunday. You went over there. You know, we didn't go downtown. You didn't go to Germantown. That was our shopping district. And that was a big thing. And even on Frankfurt Avenue, on the 3000 block, we had like John's Bargain Store, Yellow Front, we had the hardware, we had a Oyster House. There was all these things growing up that, as I got older, growing up as a child, you know, slowly they started disappearing. And by the late 80s, it was gone. You know, all the industry, a lot of the warehouses, the businesses, everything just kind of shuttered, and this is when the decline started. By the 90s, there was nothing left. You know, and the only people that really remained were our parents, because all the kids, like myself and all, we all got married and we moved out. There was nothing here for us anymore. So, you know, we tried to better ourselves and move on, but unfortunately, you know, you leave your parents behind to the blight, you know, and the concern of watching this neighborhood just fall apart.
I have a building on Roost Street, 2770 Roost Street. I sell auto parts, and I've been there 21 years. I've seen the neighborhood go from not bad to really bad, and right now it's on the scary part.
My name is Dina Richmond, and I live at 2771 Jasper Street, which is just north of Lehigh. After I first moved in, there were a couple houses next to me that were just open shells, and you know, I didn't like them, and I would see, you know, groups of, I call them zombies, but groups of junkies, you know, coming down the street, and they would go into these open, what we call shooting galleries, these shells. And I, you know, coming from Florida, I'm just like, don't these people care about their houses? Like, somebody owns these houses. And I know that they wouldn't appreciate junkies, like, being in there and using their house like this. And these people, whoever owns the houses, obviously they must not be aware. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, they must just not be aware of what's going on in their houses. One day I was outside talking to my neighbor, and a young kid came. He stepped out of one of the houses, and he just did a face plant on the sidewalk right in front of me. And I mean, if you've ever seen somebody land on their face on the sidewalk, it's bad. It looks horrible. I'm sure it felt horrible. It was bad. And I wanted to, you know, help him. I wasn't quite sure what to do, you know, because he just landed on his face. I figure, okay, he must have broke something. I'm afraid to touch him. And my neighbor starts screaming at me, telling me not to touch him, because she knew better. She didn't want me to catch something from him, basically. We called 911, and they sent a police car around. You know, I told them we need an ambulance. They sent a police car. It's like, yeah, we really need an ambulance, because that's what happens in my neighborhood. They sent, I guess they sent the police car first to check to see what's going on. And an ambulance finally came, and they took him away in a body bag. He was dead.
Some of these heroin abusers are not employed. They may have a 20 bag a day habit, and it's a habit that they have to feed, or else they become what's known on the street as dope sick. When it comes to heroin abuse, the first time that person gets high, they describe it as euphoric. And it's almost like if you're looking at their biological level, they're normal. They kind of spike unbelievably high. And then their fall is just the same on the descending side. And over years of abuse, you'll watch this cycle kind of just come closer and closer to that norm. But and it dips and it comes above it based on their use. They get to a point where they plateau, where they can do 20 bags of heroin just to get to the norm. And if they don't do it, the descending fall is great. So they have to maintain that just to feel normal. So if you can imagine that biological condition and your desire and need to go out and make yourself normal, well, they're chasing that money all the time. If you're talking about 20 bags, you're talking about 200 hours a day. And that's 7 days a week. So that's 1,400 hours, all right? And you're unemployed. Where's it coming from? So the problem is that theft from autos, people leave things in their car, they park, maybe they hop on the L, maybe they just leave some change in their cup when they park in front of the house. Now you're walking down the street and you need 200 hours today to feel normal, and you're looking at 35 cents in a cup holder in a car. What are you going to do? You're going to smash a 400-hour car window to get in there.
If you have a scrapyard in an area, you have it there because people are stealing stuff from houses and going in there and gutting them, or taking somebody's screen door off and recycling, quote, recycling it. They're major issues. It's major problems. A lot of times you can fight some of these in zoning issues if they're not zoned properly or they don't have proper licenses. But the other issue is that if they have the correct permits and is zoned properly for them, it's really hard to do anything to remove them.
When it comes to these burglaries, precious metals right now, metals are high. The economy's bad, dollars weak, metals are high. So what's happening? They break into the house, they're stealing copper piping, and they're taking it where? Well, they got to be taking it to a scrapyard. They're stealing catalytic converters off of cars. Why? Because of the metals that are in them. Metals are high, so where are they taking them? They have to be taken to scrapyards. And so part of the problem is that we have to vigilantly watch these scrapyards all the time. We just recently paid visits, and I have a handful of them in the 24th district. We paid each a visit, let them know we're reminding you this is the state law. Anything over $100 in value that you intake, proper ID from the person, what the source was, describe the item, photograph it. Under law, they have to do that. We also do surprise inspections, our major crimes unit. Well, in conjunction with the fire department, the EPA, license and inspections, they'll go out and do pop-up visits. I recently made a request that every one of my junkyards, again, get another visit. Also, my crime prevention and community relations officer pop in from time to time. Hey, how you doing? Just to see what's going on. Look around the yard, see if we see strange looking copper. Another problem we had was stealing batteries out of cars and trucks, particularly commercial vehicles. Why? Again, for the metals. Well, they're taking them somewhere. And I just want to make sure they're not taking them to my scrapyards. And as you can see, the proximity of this scrapyard to this viaduct and to these routes, another issue. Why? Because if somebody steals copper piping, they put it in a stolen shopping cart, they roll it down this railroad bed, right into the junkyard.
It is the part of the railroad tracks that goes behind between Jasper and Helen,
okay,
and in Sterner, and then there's the railroad tracks.
okay.
And that whole thing, all of that was weeds. Like, you could not see the tracks, you couldn't see anything beyond that. It was that covered. And we worked for a long time. I'm talking maybe almost 2 years to get that taken down.
When it comes to all these tracks in the neighborhood, it's 30 years now. We're talking the 70s, even 40 years, 45 now, I'm dating myself, but it was big in the 70s, all the industry, track usage was huge. 80s started to die down. 90s, you only seen a handful of trains. 2000, I can pick out the different properties that actually have cars coming in there. Over time, you're talking 40 years, 45 years now, maybe in another 20 years, it'll be gone. I don't see it disappearing in 5 or 10, because it's like that slow death, but it's a real slow death. As long as there's a business that still gets materials or supplies or something in, well, that track line's still going to be open. The reason why you don't see the Conrail police is because it's like everybody else. They don't have the money and they don't have the manpower. Conrail might only have 6 Conrail police to cover 150 miles of track. So that would be me and you. We now have to cover everything in the city of Philadelphia. All the track me and you are going to have to cover if there's a problem. Well, guess what? We can't be everywhere at any one time. So now you have to prioritize the parts where you have the most train traffic, you know, because you want to protect your interest. If I don't have trains on a section of track, well, I'm not going to worry about that anymore. I have no need to be there. I understand the blight and everything else, but you need to protect your interest. So I'm going to be where the profit is. You know, I'm making money. I want to, you know, keep that going. And that's the problem. They're spread so thin that when you reach out to them and you point something out to Conrail and say, listen, you know, I've seen kids on your tracks. They're doing this. They're doing that. You know, and we do. We reach out trying to work with them, and they appreciate it. And they're like, you know, we'll see what we can do. But again, they're an hour away. If I call them, they're coming from Morrisville. It's all the way up near Trenton, up there at their main facility. So now you're going to ask 2 guys to get in a car and drive down here. It's like me dialing 911, tell them I'm being robbed, and then turn around and say, listen, I'll be with you in an hour. Just try to wait. Well, what do you think is going to happen in an hour? Everything's going to be done in that time. They've made a deal with the 24th where they've given the police, Captain Vogt, permission to now pursue people onto the property. If you run on there, due to the meeting we had, he says, if that's what you need, because again, it's private property, you just can't go on there. They said they will give them a letter saying, you're more than welcome to go on there and get them. So, I mean, we now have that to where we can access the property. You know, if the junkies are on there or someone's running. We just acquired 2 dirt bikes in the 24th. And that's one of the reasons we wanted it for. Because of people going up on Conrail's property. You can't go up there with a police car. But if I got a dirt bike, guess what? The playing field's now been leveled. I can get to where I couldn't get before. Same thing in Juniata with the parks, back along the river. It gives us access to things that we couldn't before. And we've noticed that there's been a change because of leveling the bushes and the landscape and cleaning it up a little bit when they came down. And now that we have the police presence and the means to get in there, slowly but surely you're seeing them disappear. Now they might move 2 blocks away, but that's okay. Well, then we'll move down 2 blocks again and follow them at that point. You know, you got to keep pushing them. I mean, and I hate to say it, if I got to push them into your neighborhood, so be it, but I don't want them in mine anymore. You know, and eventually, if I push them into yours, then you'll push them out of yours, and if they'll come to a point where they'll have nowhere to go. And they'll understand it. You know, nobody wants this anymore.
I really do believe that education is the key to anything. And the more knowledge people have, the more resources they can find, and then the better you're going to be. Period.
We need a community buy-in to the schools also to help them realize the kids from our neighborhood are going to these local schools. How do we make this school better? You know, what can we do? Do we get parent involvement, community involvement in the schools to help? Because education is the way out of this too. They don't feel like when they grow up they have to go work the streets. They could go get a job somewhere. And so it's a multifaceted approach that we need to take, and it's not going to happen in a year or two. But I think if there's willingness there from the community, like you hear me say over and over again, because the willingness had to start within the community. And then if they get help from people like the NACs, the CDCs, the city council, or maybe some other city offices.
If they don't have a sense of belonging, if they're worrying about where they're going to sleep at night and be safe, and food, and that sense of community, you don't have it. It's not there. That is what needs to be built up. That's your inner core. And then everything to me would stem outside of that. You know, so that is my theory on life.
Yeah.
In general. Plant a flower, say something nice, let people know you're available and what is available. And if it takes from going to door to door to door and keep telling them that this is available and this can be done, then I think that's what we'll do. And I think that the New Kensington does that. I think they do that. They reach out to people all the time and say, look, we're here to help. I don't think people believe it yet. I think it's going to take a long time before they trust them and they believe them. But I think that that's where it's going to have to go.
I'm a co-founder of Philly Tree People, and we've been planting trees around Kensington, Port Richmond, and Fishtown for the past 5 years. We're going to hit 1,000 trees next year. We work with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and with Division of Parks and Recreation, which used to be called Fairmount Parks, but now it's Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, PPR. So basically there is a tree application that is available to homeowners who want trees, and that tree application is essentially a permit for us to put a tree there, to cut into the sidewalk and put a tree there. So we only give, and they're free, we give trees to homeowners. It has to be the homeowner who signs the form. We can't just go out and plant trees wherever we want. We have to get permission from the homeowner. I wish we could, because there's so many vacant lots we could put trees in or in front of. And so we work with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society to get all of the sites approved by a certified arborist. Some sites are not approved for various reasons. Too close to a stop sign. You need at least 3 feet of space for the American Disabilities Act. 3 feet of space between the pit and steps so that a wheelchair can go across the sidewalk. I think we're doing 55 or 60 trees, and we start from my house, and we have all these volunteers. And again, it's a big celebration of neighborhood and trees, and people get to meet more of their neighbors. And everybody who comes out to volunteer gets to meet like-minded people who care about the community and want the community to be better.
Somerset neighbors, they want to do this lot cleanup. They want to have that fenced off, turn it into a community garden, and that's in the works right now. And that intersection is probably the worst intersection for drug dealing there. They come in, they spoke to me about it. I told them we'll lend all the police support we can. We'll get the dealers off the corner, we'll arrest them, we'll set up a presence there while this lot's being converted into a community garden, and we'll do the best we can to maintain that and to keep those dealers out of there. And our thought process was that if it's an active community garden, there's folks there all the time, well, the drug dealers are going to leave.
I consider Captain Vote one of the reasons why this has been a success. I sit on the PDAC board, which is the Police District Advisory Council of the 24th, so I work with him one-on-one when it comes to that. I have a lot of involvement. I've seen a lot of captains come and go in the 24th over the years. Captain Vote is from here. And I think that's what makes it a difference. When you're from an area and you come back to it, you want to make this neighborhood better. And he really does care about this neighborhood. Some captains just come in and they do what they need to do to get the numbers, and they make everybody happy. And you know what? And he's not like that. He came in and he told us what he wanted to do as far as the crime in the area. He comes out to the meetings. He's hands-on.
Drive is to get the community involved. To come out, we already had several, and we're looking forward to having several more. Community cleanup days where the department does all it can to contact other city agencies that can provide resources for these cleanups.
Each council member has so much NTI money that they had under the street administration that still has left. And the reason why our district still has some, they have what they called QRB zones, which were qualified zones for the poorer neighborhoods, the census tracts that were poor. Unfortunately, my QRB zone is in South Philadelphia from below South Street to Washington, which is Queen Villas, Bella Vista. It's my richer neighborhood. So I can't use any of that money to do any type of demolition or acquisition unless I would do some projects there or transfer some of that money with another council person who has unrestricted funds. So that also hurts us in a way because the way it was done at that time, the way the ordinance was written, they only drew a specific area that was, I guess, considered the poor area. But our real poor areas are outside the boundaries, so we can't use any of that funding.
You can build us a park from here to the river with a trestle that'll go across the train tracks and they can ride their bikes and all that. But if you don't stabilize this area, this becomes a ground for all the drug addicts to go rob kids and take their bikes, their sneakers. There was one drug addict on my street not long ago. They walked down the street and stole his pants off the boy. He had $200 jeans. They took his pants with his drugs. It was on camera, still on camera. But if you don't start by, your start is this building. Your start is this building. If you can start to fix this building, that shows everyone that changes are coming. It's going to be good here. People are going to want to move here. They're going to know that you're going to develop this area. They're going to know you can put a park here, you can put more houses over here. But you got to start with this building. Why this building? Because you're facing Kensington and Somerset. You're facing onto Somerset Avenue. There's a church directly across from this, Mount Zion, I believe it is. You show these people that this is going to become a safe area. A lot of nice people are going to move here. You're going to want to stay here. You're going to want to fix up your house and live here. You're going to be able to get up on that accepted train or take a bus and go anywhere in this city and feel safe. You won't be afraid. People are afraid. They'd avoid this area. They walk around. They can walk up to that street with their kids and their coaches. Right now they can.
But I think, it's not just that one warehouse that has to be rehabilitated. It's this whole little area that needs to be rehabilitated. And unfortunately, it's like it all has to happen at the same time, I think, because you can't just put something nice in the middle there. And, if the rest of the area is junky, I don't think it'll work. But the whole area has to be turned nice. If we could do something like an area like kind of like the Piazza and Northern Liberties, and you take this very large area and make it nice, and it becomes a center where people can go. But it's bigger than just that warehouse.
Hopefully, if you got the police presence helping to stop everything right now, just put it on pause. Now all we need is a step in the right direction. And everything can go from there. But it has to be a step forward. Because the only other thing you can do is go backwards. You can't stay and pause.
I think moving forward with this plan, obviously, once they get a master plan together, I think that the resources may become available to maybe demolish some properties, either through L&I or maybe some NTI money that we could get transferred into our budget in some way, that we could help them do that. But I don't think there's going to be initial investment in there unless we see an actual plan moving forward and say, you know what, this is worth investing in right now because we really see a big change happening. But I know that if that does happen and there's a willingness to move forward with this and maybe develop the parcels that are already all together and then move from there, I do see that L&I and even some NTI money from the district council person would be able to help finalize that.
It's been a long time coming. It's been waiting for someone to come rescue it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, New Kensington, CDC, you people, the city, are the ones. All it takes is one change to happen. One major change and everything develops. Yeah. I've seen it happen over and over again. I mean, if you go down to South Philly around, Washington Avenue and 18th Street, that whole area's exploded. And it's so nice. And it's Kensington's turn. They need a shot.